Ethan Walker was the kind of man everyone noticed, not because he was strong or rich, but because he was strange. On Liberty Station, a quiet human colony floating between Mars and Jupiter, people lived simple lives. They farmed, mined asteroids, traded, and spent their evenings telling stories in the mess hall. Everyone had a role. Everyone, except Ethan. He spent most of his days in an old garage near the edge of the station, surrounded by piles of metal, wires, and dusty tools. The kids would sneak by, giggling, and throw pebbles at his door. "Mad Ethan is building a rocket to nowhere," they shouted. The adults were no better. At the bar, they laughed over drinks. "That man is wasting oxygen," said one miner. 10 years, and what has he made? Nothing but junk. But Ethan didn't care. Every morning, before the station lights fully came on, he woke up, ate a small meal, and returned to his garage. He worked with patience, welding and shaping strange pieces of tech he scavenged from old wrecks. He traded for broken starship engines, scrap reactors, and alien parts left behind from forgotten wars. People thought he was building a toy. A fantasy project for a man who didn't know when to give up. But at night, when the station was quiet and most of the colonists were asleep, a strange glow came from the garage. It was a soft blue light, like the inside of a fusion core. It hummed with quiet power, a sound no one recognized. Some nights, a loud crack would echo through the colony, and the lights would flicker. Rumors started to spread. "Maybe he's building a bomb," someone whispered. "Or a death ray," another said with a laugh. One woman crossed her arms and said, "If he blows us up, I told you all first." But no one ever went inside the garage. No one dared. Ethan kept the doors locked, and there were security bots guarding the entrance, small, patched-up drones he had repaired himself. Despite the laughter, Ethan's eyes always burned with focus. He was quiet, but there was steel in him. Every day, his hands moved with purpose, tightening bolts, soldering wires, sketching out new designs on thin, glowing screens. What no one knew was that Ethan wasn't building just any machine. He was building something that could change everything. Years ago, when he was younger, Ethan had been a starship engineer. He had worked for the big corporate fleets, designing drives that could cross star systems in days. But when he suggested a new kind of warp engine, something faster, more powerful, something that could take humanity beyond the farthest star, they had laughed at him. "It's impossible," his boss had said. "Stick to the manual, Walker. You think you're smarter than every scientist in the galaxy." They fired him soon after. That was when he came to Liberty Station, bought the garage, and started building the dream everyone said would fail. And now, after all these years, he was close. On this night, the humming from his garage was louder than ever. The walls of the station seemed to vibrate. The blue glow turned bright white, shining through the cracks in the door. Across the colony, people woke up. Children cried. The station's AI announced a power surge warning. Then, boom! The sound echoed through the station. Lights went out. Gravity faltered for a second, sending loose tools floating through the air. People ran to their windows and stared at the source. Ethan's garage was glowing like a star. The doors burst open, and for the first time, everyone could see what he had been working on. Inside was a ship, small, sleek, silver, shaped like no human vessel anyone had ever seen. Its surface pulsed with blue light, as if it was alive. The engines glowed softly, humming with power. Ethan stood in front of it, covered in grease, breathing hard, but smiling. He had done it. The laughter in the colony died that night. No one spoke as they watched from their windows. The man they called Mad Ethan had built something that no one believed was possible. And deep in the dark sky beyond Liberty Station, something stirred. The colony didn't sleep that night. People gathered near the edge of the station, whispering, staring at the glowing ship that now stood where Ethan's garage used to be. The silver hull reflected the colony lights like a mirror. Its engines gave off a soft, steady hum that vibrated through the floor. When the station lights finally returned, the colony leader, Governor Reyes, arrived with security guards. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a voice that could silence a room. "Ethan Walker," she said through the comms, her voice cold. "Step away from the craft." Ethan wiped the sweat from his face. He looked calm, almost amused. "Why?" he asked. "Because no one knows what that thing is," Reyes said. "You caused a power surge that almost shut down life support. You will shut it off and submit to an inspection." Ethan shook his head slowly. "No." Gasps ran through the crowd. No one said no to the governor. "This ship is mine," Ethan said. "And it works. For 10 years, you called me a fool. You told me to stop wasting my life. Now you all get to see why I never stopped." Reyes' eyes narrowed. "What exactly does it do?" Ethan turned toward the ship and ran his hand along the smooth metal. "It goes faster than light," he said. "Not with the old warp engines you all use. This one bends space like paper. It folds stars together. I can cross 1,000 light years before you even finish breakfast." No one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship. "Impossible," someone in the crowd muttered. Ethan grinned. "That's what they told me, too. But I built it anyway." Reyes stepped forward. "You can't just fly that thing. It hasn't been approved. If it fails, you could tear a hole in space-time, destroy the whole station." Ethan cut her off. "It won't fail." His voice was steady, confident. "I've tested it. Piece by piece, for years. I've run every calculation 100 times." He climbed up the side of the ship, opened the cockpit hatch, and looked back at the crowd. "You can stay here and argue," he said. "Or you can watch history happen." The crowd watched in silence as Ethan climbed inside. The ship's lights flared brighter. Governor Reyes shouted, "Ethan! This is a direct order." The rest of her words were drowned out by the rising roar of the engines. The ship vibrated, then lifted gently off the ground. Dust swirled around the landing bay. The hum turned into a deep, steady thrum that shook the walls. Children covered their ears. Adults stepped back. And then, with a flash of white light, the ship shot upward, leaving the landing bay in a blur. The crowd ran to the observation windows. Outside, they saw Ethan's ship break through the station's thin shield barrier and rocket into space. It left a glowing trail behind it, brighter and faster than any warp jump they had ever seen. "Track him," Governor Reyes ordered. "Now." But the station computers showed nothing. Ethan's ship had already jumped beyond their scanners. For the first time in years, Liberty Station was completely silent. Hours passed. People whispered about what they had seen. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Others were secretly proud. "Maybe he really did it," one miner said. "If he did, where did he go?" asked another. "Wherever he went," said an old engineer, "he just made history." Far from Liberty Station, Ethan sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. His ship hummed softly, stable and smooth. Outside, the stars stretched into long white lines as he flew faster than light. The engine had worked perfectly. But he wasn't just testing speed. He had a destination, a place he had found on an old alien map he once scavenged from a derelict ship. A signal. A beacon. Something waiting out there, beyond human space. Ethan's jaw tightened as the ship's navigation system beeped. He was close. And then, out of the darkness, he saw it. A floating structure, massive and ancient, lit by a faint green glow. It looked like no station or ship he had ever seen. The beacon pulsed, as if it had been waiting for him. Ethan's heart pounded. He had just proven everyone wrong. But now, he realized, this was only the beginning. Ethan slowed the ship as he approached the massive object floating in space. It was bigger than Liberty Station, maybe bigger than any human ship ever built. Its surface was smooth and black, broken only by glowing green lines that pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. This thing is alive, Ethan whispered to himself. He activated his scanners. The readings were strange, older than anything in human records. The beacon was transmitting something, a repeating signal. He played the message. At first, it was just static. Then a deep, alien voice spoke in a language he didn't know. The ship's AI translated slowly, word by word. Warning. The swarm comes. The swarm devours. Ethan's chest tightened. The swarm, he said. What are you talking about? The beacon pulsed faster, and more data poured into his ship's computer. It showed images: planets burning, cities falling, ships swallowed by black clouds of machines. The swarm was not just an enemy. It was a force of nature, a galaxy-eating wave. And it was heading for human space. Ethan gripped the controls, thinking fast. For years, people had laughed at him. Called him crazy. And now he had proof that something was coming. Something that would wipe out everything. He could stay out here, keep exploring, find more answers. Or he could turn back and try to warn Liberty Station, the same people who mocked him for a decade. He leaned back in his seat and stared at the stars. They won't believe me, he said softly. They never do. But then he remembered the kids who threw pebbles at his door, the farmers who worked hard every day, the workers who just wanted to survive. If he did nothing, they wouldn't stand a chance. He took a deep breath and turned the ship around. Back on Liberty Station, the colony was restless. Governor Reyes was furious. He's a danger to all of us, she said in the council chamber. If he comes back, I'll have him arrested. His reckless stunt could have killed us. But others weren't so sure. You saw it, said an old engineer. That wasn't a stunt. That was a working faster than light drive. We just watched the first human to fly beyond the frontier. And risk tearing open space while he did it, Reyes snapped. I won't allow him to. An alarm cut her off. Unidentified ship incoming, the AI announced. Everyone ran to the observation deck. A streak of light shot across the sky and slowed just outside the station's shield. Ethan's ship. It landed softly, like it was touching down on air. The cockpit opened, and Ethan stepped out, his face hard and determined. The crowd that gathered was silent. They were no longer laughing. Governor Reyes marched forward. You are under arrest for. There's no time for this. Ethan shouted, louder than anyone had ever heard him speak. The governor stopped. What did you see out there? She asked carefully. Ethan turned and pointed to the stars. Something is coming. Something that eats worlds. If we don't prepare, this colony, all of human space, will be gone. The crowd began to murmur nervously. Reyes crossed her arms. And we're supposed to believe you? Ethan looked her dead in the eye. Believe me or don't. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to get ready. When the swarm arrives, I'll be ready to fight. Will you? The room went quiet. No one had ever seen Ethan like this. He turned and climbed back into his ship. I'll be in orbit, he said over his shoulder. Building what we need to survive. Join me or stay here and wait to die. The ship lifted off again, leaving the crowd in stunned silence. In the quiet of space, Ethan floated above the colony, staring at the stars. His mind raced with plans, weapons, shields, new engines. He had spent years building something for himself. Now, he would build something to save everyone. For the first time, he wasn't just trying to prove them wrong. He was trying to save them. For 3 days, Ethan stayed in orbit, working on his ship. He barely slept, barely ate. The hum of the engine was constant, like a living heartbeat. He built new weapons, recalibrated the shields, and programmed the ship's AI to predict possible attack patterns. Down on Liberty Station, people argued about him. "He's a hero," one farmer said. "We should help him." "He's insane," a miner snapped. "He'll get us all killed." Governor Reyes called an emergency council meeting. "This is exactly what I warned you about," she said. "He's dangerous. If he really believes there's some kind of threat coming, he could drag us into a war we don't need." The old engineer shook his head. "What if he's right?" The room fell silent. That night, the first sign came. The station's long-range scanners picked up movement at the edge of the system, thousands of small, fast-moving objects. At first, they thought it was just a meteor swarm. But then the objects changed course. They were heading straight for Liberty Station. Governor Reyes stared at the screen. "Get me Walker," she said quietly. In orbit, Ethan's comms lit up. "Walker," Reyes said, her voice tight. "We're seeing something. A swarm of unknown objects. Heading for us." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'll intercept," he said, flipping switches on his control panel. The ship's engines roared to life. "This doesn't mean I trust you," Reyes warned. "Good," Ethan said. "I don't need you to trust me. Just stay out of my way." He turned the ship toward the incoming swarm and pushed the throttle. Space bent around him as the drive engaged. Minutes later, he was at the edge of the system. And there it was. A black wave, stretching across the stars. Thousands of tiny machines, moving together like a living cloud. They shimmered as they swallowed dust and debris, breaking it down for fuel. "The swarm," Ethan whispered. He armed his weapons. Back on Liberty Station, the entire colony gathered in the observation deck. They watched as Ethan's ship became a tiny dot against the darkness. The dot glowed brighter, weapons firing. Then came the light show. Beams of white energy cut through the swarm, tearing pieces out of it. Explosions rippled across the sky. The crowd gasped. "He's fighting them," someone whispered. Inside the cockpit, Ethan's ship shook violently. The swarm was faster than he expected. Pieces of it broke off and swarmed toward him like angry insects. "Shields at 70%, the AI warned. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Hold together. Just a little longer." He lined up the main cannon and fired. A massive wave of energy blasted through the swarm, scattering them. But more kept coming. Down on the station, panic began to spread. "If he can't stop them, they'll reach us," someone shouted. Governor Reyes stood frozen, staring at the battle. She had never believed Ethan. Not once. And yet, here he was, the only thing standing between them and death. Ethan's hands flew over the controls. He pushed the engine past its limit, spinning through the swarm, blasting holes wherever he could. But there were too many. "They're adapting," the AI warned. "Formations changing. Attack patterns unpredictable." "Then we change too," Ethan growled. He rerouted power from the shields to the engine and prepared a maneuver no one had ever tried before, a warp pulse, designed to release a shockwave powerful enough to disrupt the swarm's cohesion. "If this works," he muttered, "they'll scatter. If it doesn't..." He didn't finish the sentence. Governor Reyes' voice came over the comms. "Walker," she said softly. "Do you need help?" Ethan almost laughed. "Yes," he said. "Stay alive." He activated the warp pulse. The stars around him stretched, bent, and twisted. For a second, everything went white. Then silence. When the light faded, the swarm was gone. Scattered. Broken apart. On Liberty Station, cheers erupted. People hugged each other, crying with relief. Governor Reyes lowered her head and let out a long breath. "He did it," she said quietly. But Ethan wasn't cheering. In the cockpit, alarms still blared. His ship was damaged, its systems fried from the pulse. And in the distance, on his scanners, he could still see them fragments of the swarm, reforming. "This isn't over," Ethan said. The silence after the warp pulse didn't last long. Ethan sat in the cockpit, sweat running down his face, staring at the scanner. The swarm had scattered, yes, but not destroyed. Tiny fragments were already moving, pulling back together like drops of oil on water. "They're coming back," he muttered. The AI's voice was calm but grim. "Reformation speed suggests full cohesion in 6 hours. 6 hours, Ethan whispered. Not enough time. Back on Liberty Station, Governor Reyes sent an urgent call to every worker, every engineer, every pilot. "We don't have a choice anymore," she told them. "You all saw what's coming. Walker is the only reason we're still breathing. If we don't help him, we're finished." For the first time, the entire colony worked together. Engineers ran to the shipyard, farmers brought fuel supplies, miners offered raw ore for weapon parts. And up in orbit, Ethan guided them all. "Divert power to the defense grid," he ordered. "Turn those cargo haulers into barricades. Anyone with flight training, report to the launch bay." The colony was no longer laughing at Ethan Walker. They were listening. Hours passed. The swarm reformed into a black wall, moving faster now, hungrier, as if it knew what Ethan had done to it. "They'll be here in 20 minutes, the AI said. Ethan looked down at the colony below him. Lights blazed from every deck. Shields flickered to life. "All right," he said, gripping the controls. "Let's finish this." The first wave hit hard. Thousands of drone-like machines slammed into the station's shields, making them spark and flicker. Defense cannons fired non-stop, filling space with streaks of white light. Ethan's ship roared through the battle, weaving between enemy clusters, tearing them apart with precise shots. "Left side breach," the comms screamed. "I'm on it," Ethan replied, spinning the ship and firing his cannons. A massive explosion lit up the void. Inside the colony, panic threatened to break out. "We can't hold," someone shouted. Governor Reyes slammed her fist on the console. "Yes, we can," she snapped. "Walker's out there alone, fighting for us. Get those shields back online." For the first time, her voice carried not just authority but belief. Ethan was everywhere at once, his ship moving like a silver streak. He pushed the engine to its limit, his hands a blur on the controls. But the swarm just kept coming. "Main reactor overheating," the AI warned. "Then we burn it out," Ethan growled. He switched the ship into overdrive and dove straight into the thickest part of the swarm. Energy beams flared from every weapon port. The ship shook, alarms blaring, but Ethan didn't stop. One final maneuver. One final gamble. He charged the warp pulse again, this time at maximum power. The AI hesitated. This could destroy the ship. "Then we go out in style," Ethan said with a grin. He triggered the pulse. The explosion of light was blinding. The shock wave tore through the swarm, ripping it apart in every direction. Machine fragments scattered like ash in the wind. When the light faded, silence returned. The swarm was gone. On Liberty Station, no one spoke for several seconds. Then, slowly, cheers began to rise. The sound grew louder, echoing through every hall and chamber. Governor Reyes looked up at the sky, her voice soft. "He did it." Ethan's ship limped back toward the station, smoke trailing from its engines. When he landed, the crowd was waiting for him. For years, they had mocked him, laughed at him, called him a fool. Now they stood in silence, staring at the man who had just saved them all. Ethan stepped out, tired, his suit scorched, but smiling. Governor Reyes stepped forward. "Ethan Walker," she said quietly, "on behalf of this colony, thank you." The crowd erupted in cheers. Children climbed on their parents' shoulders to see the hero up close. People clapped him on the back, shook his hand, even hugged him. But Ethan didn't gloat. He didn't remind them of the years they left. He just looked at the stars and said, "This was just the first wave. Next time, we'll be ready." And somewhere, far beyond human space, something stirred as if to answer his challenge.